So with us in the studio today, a very special man in Israel for the first time, has a very popular YouTube channel called The Apostate Prophet. And with us is Ridwan Aydemir, and with me in the studio interviewing him, Vivian, who's been zoomed in from Tel Aviv, and right here with me, Ashira Solomon. Ridwan, welcome to Israel.
Thank you so much, Fleur. It's very nice to be here.
And what do you think? What are your impressions? Your first time, you've been fighting the fight for Israel on YouTube, on your channel, which we're going to find out a little bit about in a second. But what are your first impressions?
There is so much to say. So first off, I'm very impressed with Israel. I always had good thoughts and like to research a lot about Israel and what this country has become, where it came from and all that. But coming here and seeing the country for myself, seeing the cities and the people for myself, I must say, my opinion of Israel has moved even further toward very positive, because it's a very developed, very well taken care of country, very nice people. Everybody has been so nice. And so many stereotypes, so many accusations that people make about Israel are completely crushed. I knew that lots of the things that people say about Israel are false, but coming here and seeing it for myself, I just can't wait to go and tell everyone.
So Ridwan, how does a nice Muslim Turkish boy like you end up with a channel which is essentially, at this point, standing up for Israel? Tell us a little bit about your story.
Long story.
Make it short.
So I'm an ex-Muslim, which means I used to be a Muslim at some point, and I am no longer. I started my whole YouTube journey about 6 years ago, and when I started it, it was mostly about simply sharing my experience as somebody who is no longer a Muslim and who has, problems with it, problems with Islam, problems with the Muslim culture and all that. Over time, it changed very much, and especially since October 7, the direction changed very much toward being, pro-Israel and countering the accusations and fighting Islamism and Hamas.
But Ridwan, you're in your life where you grew up, you had a very negative view of Jews and Israel in general. What happened? Just tell us a little bit about that journey.
Well, I grew up in a very strictly religious Muslim household, and in that household, I learned some very detestable things that people learn around the world that are quite common in such religious households. I was in first grade, I don't know how old I was then, 6, 7, when I first learned in a religious congregation and in Germany from Turkish parents and other, Islamists in our surroundings. I learned that in a possible near future, we will, as it is prophesied, fight the Jews and kill them. And even the rocks and trees will say, there is a Jew behind me, come and kill him.
I've heard the rocks and trees story.
Yeah. And I was told about this, and I didn't even know what a Jew is at that point. Mm-hmm. All I knew is that these are terrible people who hate us, and they are evil, and we should beware of them and fight them. And growing up with that and living in such a household for such a long time and hearing these things all the time, I never really personally believed in that aspect of it, which might have made it easier for me to, once I had my doubts with Islam and once I found my way out of believing in Islam, it might have been easier for me to, approach that message, for example, and the message of hate, to analyze it and to recognize that I was just brainwashed, and many others who are in my position and who are raised with that kind of stuff are also severely brainwashed. The unfortunate thing is that it is everywhere around us. It was everywhere around me. So many people take all of that brainwashing and believe in it and run with it. They take that as a fact. And I felt like it is a duty upon me, and I felt quite passionate about it, to fight that and to expose that, not only because so many others, especially non-Muslims, and as I realize now, many people in Israel are quite naive, to be honest, about what people believe and the hate that they harbor and teach.
I mean, we've seen the result of that, unfortunately, at its peak on October 7th. But it's very depressing to think that things are getting worse and not better. Would you say that?
Well, there is always an issue with the whole, with how, anti-Semitism, Jew hatred has been kind of, going on. Lots of people thought it is something of the past. We have a history. We just, we experienced the Holocaust. It is a very fresh memory. People will now learn from it and move on from it. I would say that now, with the outbreak of this current war, I wouldn't say that things have actually gotten worse. I wouldn't say that anti-Semitism has increased. I would say it was always there. It just found a perfect opportunity to show its ugly face and come out. And suddenly all of those people who already were anti-Semitic and who have these attitudes started seeing and supporting each other. And you can now see, like on social media or other platforms, you can see Islamists, neo-Nazis, communists, and other people get together and express how hateful and how supposedly anti-Zionist, but actually anti-Jewish and anti-human they are. It has always been there. It was just brewing, and it was bound to get to this level at some point. And that's the problem. When I say that that what I saw is that people are very naive and, very dismissive about what people actually think and the thoughts and the feelings that they harbor, that's what I mean. People weren't aware, and people suddenly act surprised or are genuinely surprised. I'm not really that surprised. I feel like we had it coming. I'm just a little bit surprised that the left of the political compass in the West has become so comfortable in joining in.
What's your educational approach to Muslims, if that's your intended purpose, to re-educate them? How do you do that, knowing that they've been indoctrinated since first grade, like you said? So what is your approach to help them see the light a little bit?
Well, when I started my YouTube channel, my intention was to talk about facts in Islam, surrounding Islam, but to also be a little bit provocative about it and include a lot of satire and sarcasm. And it worked because that attracted a lot of attention. Of course, a lot of hate as well, but a lot of attention. And I received so many messages from people who said, hey, at first I hated what you do, but then I kept watching, and now I left Islam, or now I changed my opinions, and thank you. So I kept seeing these, and I try to continue just going down the path of analyzing the theological aspects and flaws, everything that I think is wrong with Islam, but also to point out the moral aspects and to actually put certain things into people's faces.
Could I just ask a question? When you speak about this kind of, I tend to talk about it as a moment of combustion where all of this hatred converged in the West, primarily. I'm thinking of the Islamists and the so-called progressive left, although there's nothing actually progressive about them. And the hatred is so ferocious that they are determined to, and they do, deny the facts of the savagery of October 7th. How do you explain that? I mean, we've all seen many interviews of interrogations of captured Hamas terrorists, and they're asked what they did to Israelis and others on October 7th, and they're forthcoming with saying all these horrible things that they did, and then asked, well, what does Islam or what does Allah say about that? And they always say, no, that's against Islam. So I guess it's sort of a two-part question. Why are all these protesters denying it? And why are these Islamists, who are so kind of hardline, devout believers, they say, doing these horrible things? That's right. You can lump me in with the naive Israelis.
Well, it is a very difficult thing to talk about. There is a very dark and very difficult reality to talk about, which is a lot of people repeat the same thing. They say, how can people really do this, or can they really? Like some people deny it just because they don't believe that somebody could actually
physically
do
possible.
these terrible things. And the thing is, there is more than just the confessions from the terrorists, right? We have footage of Hamas terrorists walking through the streets and celebrating over a dead, disfigured, burned woman on the ground. You have a video of them chasing a family and then shooting the whole family at gunpoint. All kinds of horrible things. We have photos of a woman who was with her pants removed, burned, and so on. The thing is, when you talk about this, at first they deny that it happens. When you then when you show this to them, they accuse you, or they try to find another excuse and say, "Look, no, it must be manipulated. It must be this and that."
AI. That's the new thing.
And once you prove that it is actually completely authentic, they then switch, especially the Islamists, they then switch to deflecting or justifying what happened. And what I think is, especially the Islamists in this discussion, they don't actually have a problem with what Hamas did on that day. They don't actually consider it like an abhorrent thing. To them, this is just, to them, everything that happened is justified. Everything that happened is justifiable. The brutal killings, the torture, the rape, all the horrible things that you have seen is justified, because to them this is an ideological and deeply rooted fight against a group of people which they always thought were, naturally or eternally evil and deceptive and not human anyway. It's an ultimate level of dehumanization that is being taught to people in an Islamist mindset when it comes to Jews.
I think there's something else at play here, and that is that, and we see it with Iran, that when people are saying these things, the West doesn't believe them,
Yes.
which to me is actually the real racism. It's almost like, oh, they're barbarians. We shouldn't really believe that. Don't really mean it. That to me is the real racism. When you don't take people and what they're saying at face value, you're making excuses for them, or you're sugarcoating it and not actually hearing what they're actually saying.
Israelis, as far as I can observe from the very few days that I have been here, are very polite.
Polite?
Very apologetic.
Are you kidding me?
Very,
Apologetic, maybe.
No.
Polite.
in terms of these political issues, too polite, too
Or too
apologetic.
politically correct, maybe.
Politically correct, always
Yeah.
giving the other side the benefit of the doubt. I've encountered so many people here. It's kind of insane, actually. After such a horrific thing happened, encountered too many people here who are like, we are at fault. We might be at fault. I understand those people. Why would you even bother saying that at the moment?
I know.
But
it's always like that.
Stop being so sensitive. Stop giving the opposite side the benefit of the doubt. They don't care.
Stop doing their propaganda.
Yes, they don't care. They don't care. Believe them when they say that they want to eradicate you.
So thank you so much for being here with us and for bravely speaking out your truth about your experience and what you're trying to do. Ridwan is a one of a kind, the apostate prophet. Follow him on YouTube. And thank you for being in Israel. And thank you for being with us. And thank you for speaking that truth.
Thank you so much. Thanks for inviting me. And I wish everyone all the best.
Amen.